What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to Harry the Horse Barbecue. I'm Harry. In this one, I'm not horsing around. I'm gonna be teaching y'all how to cook a brisket entirely by feel. We're gonna trim and season a brisket in a classic Central Texas fashion, walk you through the details of the entire smoking process, smoke it off until it builds an amazing dark bark, and then I will show y'all the telltale signs of a perfectly cooked brisket without any internal or digital read thermometers. Looking to take your intuitive brisket cooking to the next level? The horse has got your back. Let's get it.
Harry the Horse Barbecue.
I've got digital instant read thermometers and internal probe thermometers and wireless probe thermometers from a variety of different companies, and I truly do love all of these. But with the price of these thermometers ranging from anywhere from $30 like the ThermoWorks Dot all the way to over $100 for the ThermaPen 1, these are not cheap tools, and it's likely that some of you don't have access to these tools as a part of your barbecue tool belt. When I was working at Handsome Devil BBQ, most of the time when we were cooking briskets, we would check on them by feel to see when they were done. Now, I also picked up a few tips and tricks from the guys over at Hoodoo Brown Barbecue. Shout out Tyler Hodge. They really walked us through the brisket process that they do over at Hoodoo. So I highly recommend taking that class, but I'm gonna show you guys the signs that I look for when I'm determining that a brisket is either getting close to being done or when it is exactly done without the use of any of these tools. So in order to learn how to cook a brisket entirely by feel, we gotta go shopping for a brisket. Let's go. A brisket. Man, I had to be really strong in order to catch this brisket when it fell from the ceiling. Speaking of strong, I'm gonna need some help from my friends over at Dalstrong to help me trim up and slice this brisket. Let's get ready for 11 inches of stunning scorpion slicing. All of your brisket dreams are about to come true with the ultimate slicing and brisket knife from Dalstrong. It comes with this leather sheath that has a nice little notch system that secures the blade within the sheath. Shing! Sparkle, sparkle. This Damascus blade is forged from hazardously sharp Japanese ultra steel. The 11-inch length of this blade allows you to slice roasts, beefy old briskets, and anything you can dream with ease. The rounded tip of this blade minimizes the risk of any accidental piercing or shredding of any kind of meat, especially when you're trying to slice up your brisket for service and you don't want your succulently soft brisket to shred all over the board. This ergonomic G10 black and red handle really make this blade pop, and it actually enhances your grip and prevents slipping, especially when you're working with fatty meats like brisket. Your hand is not slipping off of this blade, but this blade really shines when you're slicing your 12-hour low smoked brisket. Now, I've been truly loving this knife, and it's a great alternative to the classic serrated knives, but those serrations can easily catch your brisket and shred it up. But this beautiful 11-inch slicing knife from Dalstrong is razor sharp, and it'll leave your brisket slices looking like they're ready for the cover of Texas Monthly magazine. Now, Dalstrong did send me this knife for free to test out. If you want to pick up one of these slicing knives from Dalstrong, you could use my affiliate link in the description down below. If you're kind enough to do so, I'll get a little bit of a kickback that goes right back into supporting this channel. So let's get back to that brisket and see if this knife is not horsing around. Now, I picked up this brisket from Creekstone Farms. They are MasterChef USDA Prime, but enough horsing around. Let's get this brisket out of the pack. And that's a little bit of a hefty boy. Now, this slicing and brisket knife isn't necessarily made to trim up briskets, but there are guys out there like Steve Gow from Smoke Trails Barbecue, and even the guys down at Bar A Barbecue are trimming up their briskets using those very long slicing knives. So I want to put this knife to the test. So start with this decal. Now, most of these briskets have this treated edge here that I do like to take off. So I'm just going to take a wee bit of this edge off. I mean, that Dalstrong knife is sharp. Do the little scoop. But our big job over here is this mohawk. Not too shabby, but we'll take down that fat a little bit more evenly. You just gotta take your time, go nice and slow, start rounding things. And at this rate, we can start to trim up some of this fat. I'd say that mohawk is looking beautiful. What I like to do on this end is I like to start to work the fat down in the shape of the brisket. So almost like rounding it as we go. This Creekstone is not horsing around. I'm gonna zip one of these edges off just a little bit, just because it's looking a little uneven. So I just zip that edge off a little bit. All right, and it's time for everyone's favorite part, which is this swoop. I like to round off that corner, and I'd say she's looking like a pretty darn good brisket at this point. A little one, but that's actually great for demonstration purposes. If you're trying to cook a brisket by feel and it's a 20-pounder out of the gate, it's gonna be really, really difficult to determine when it's done. The last thing we need to do is make this fat a little more even across, and then she'll be good to go. This may be one of the most beautiful looking briskets I've ever trimmed on the channel. Sound off in the comments. Rate this trim from 1 to 10. And now that this bad mamma jamma is trimmed to perfection, it's going down with a super Central Texas style rub. I'm gonna go in with a little bit of yellow mustard that I cut with a little bit of homemade pickle juice. Just a little bit as our binder. And what most people don't know is that the key to a perfect backyard brisket is using 3 different types of SPG. I'm going with some homemade SPG. That's the first key. Put your own homemade SPG down first because that sends the love message to the brisket. And because you're too lazy to make another batch of homemade SPG, you go in with Chud's Barbecue SPG. You know, slightly different. It wakes the brisket up and it says, hey man, you're actually a Central Texas style brisket. Pat her in and give her a flip around. Down with more of our mustard, pickle juice. Oh, that brisket looks so good before we put mustard on it. And then at this point, you have fond memories of taking the Hoodoo Brown Barbecue class, and they send you home with this. A Hoodoo Brown brisket rub. Now, if you want to figure out what's in this, go pop over to Hoodoo Brown, tell them the horse sent you, take that class, and you'll go home with some of this goodness. If you've ever had the brisket over at Hoodoo Brown, I will say the bark is unlike any brisket I've ever made at home. It's gonna bring a lot of contrast with texture. And then lastly, to add your own little signature touch, you go in with a seasoned salt lick. This is just my homemade seasoned salt, and if you want to figure out how I make this, I literally made a video all about it. I love this seasoned salt recipe. It really adds a pop to pretty much anything you're cooking. And this is essentially how I do brisket every single time. Now, the trimming process is a lot more crucial to the end result of feeling when a brisket is done. So make sure your trims are consistent. Seasoning the brisket is not super crucial when it comes to determining when a brisket is done by feel. However, the more consistent your entire process is, trim, size of your brisket, seasoning process, and the cook process, the more you can dial this in and become the ultimate backyard pitmaster. But this brisket's all seasoned up and it's ready for the cooker. So let's go fire up the cooker. Some snake nests. 1, 2, 3. Let's try and let these coals get hot. One little trick to help add a lot of smoke flavor to your brisket is throwing it on in the early stages of this cooker getting warmed up. There's a lot more dirty smoke production in the early combustion stages of wood that we really want to take advantage of while this brisket is still cold, a little tacky, and it's just going to help us amp up that amazing smoke flavor that all those classic Texas briskets have. I'm not going to run because I'll slip and fall, so I'll meet y'all back like that. That was easy. Let's get this beautiful brisket on. Something about like that. All right, y'all, we got this beautiful Central Texas style brisket sitting in the middle back of the cooker. It's gonna pick up a lot of smoke from the early combustion stages of this wood, and we're gonna really want to start to set in a lot of smoke flavor over the first 3 hours or so. Now, I've got a big old water pan sitting at the edge of the cook chamber, pretty close to the exchange. I've got the damper to the smokestack about 1/3 of the way closed, and our fire is gonna be rocking about 200 to 225 degrees for the early stages of this cook. I'll bring you back in a few hours to check on in, but until then, let's close it down. Boom, shakalaka. All right, y'all, we're about 3.5 hours in on this brisket, and we've been maintaining those temperatures steadily between 200 and 225 degrees. We are just rocking right in that sweet spot, nice and low, nice and smoky. And let me show y'all exactly how I've been doing this. So if my fire ends up getting knocked over or burning down a little bit, I've essentially just been taking these donkey tongs, breaking up the coals, and just coming out here every about 20-25 minutes or so and rearranging the fire a little bit. For the most part, I've had 2 solid base logs that I've run parallel with the firebox, and then we just come in with a big log. Once she's a little bit caught, we essentially close her down. When I use the handle to lock it from the inside, it leaves about 1 inch or 1.5 inch gap for the door. It leaves plenty of room for airflow to maintain those low temperatures. If the temperatures get a little too out of control, I've been moving the damper about halfway on each side of the firebox. And if it gets a little too smoky, we just open them wide open. So that's pretty much been my consistent process this entire time. Now let's see what that fire management technique and those little adjustments do for this brisket for the early parts of this cook. Well, that looks amazing. You can see there's a little steamy pocket right here. That's just a pocket of fat that has been rendering at an accelerated rate, but no pooling, so we're all good. But when you're looking at your brisket anywhere from 3 to 5 hours in, the first part of the feel test is to see what this brisket feels like on the fat cap. When I'm pressing down on this, there is a ton of resistance. Every time I push on the fat, it's bouncing back like a trampoline, a rubber ball, a tennis ball, however you want to describe it. It is just super firm. But some other telltale signs for your brisket cook going according to plan: there's no burning anywhere on this brisket, no curling is happening in the flat, which is great, and our bark is adhered to the meat, so we're really not flaking off any of the seasoning that we put on there. A lot of people just spritz because it's time to spritz, but in this case, I'm not gonna spritz unless I have to. But at this rate, as we're moving towards the 4-hour mark, I'm gonna bump up temps to about 250 degrees to start to build momentum in this cook to begin some more fat render and continue to develop that dark bark. No thermometers used yet, except for the one on the cooker that reads the temperature. This brisket is not horsing around. Stick on with me, hit that subscribe button, and I'll meet you back for the next phase of this cook. All right, y'all, we are 8 hours into this brisket cook. No probe thermometers have been used in the making of this video. The 7-hour mark, I rotated the brisket around and then tented it with a foil Band-Aid on the point end and on the flat end. I knew that the flat was gonna be taking the brunt of the heat, and the point end got a little crusty, so I wanted to soften that up a little bit. Got some beautiful fat render going on in the seam, and just look at that bark that's forming. Oh my goodness. We could start to push around on the brisket to see what is going on in terms of its fat render. The point end, you can see it's a lot squishier. You see how my finger goes into this, but not into this. This is still bouncing back. Not every brisket is going to be able to be wrapped at the 8-hour mark, 7-hour mark. It's going to tell you when it's ready to be wrapped. If we feel around the bottom, the flat is still very stiff. If I were to guess the internal temp right now, we are around 165 to 170 degrees. One of the other major things that you could start to see is how dry this has become on the surface. Between the 4 and 6-hour mark, this brisket was sweating out a lot of moisture. The entire surface was completely wet. Right when we hit hour 7, I bumped up temps to about 275 degrees, and I've only spritzed this brisket once, right at the 7-hour mark. Apple cider vinegar. Not too much at this stage, but she could use a little something something. Once this top fat here becomes similar in nature to the point fat, that's when I'll bring y'all back for the wrap. And at the 8-hour mark, y'all, I've opened up the damper completely, and you could just see that vortex of smoke. That draw is crazy on this pit. And temps are slowly getting back up to 275, and that's the tempo we'll rock out this brisket. And here is our brisket about 10 hours later, and it has shrunk up considerably, but that bark is looking amazing. We're starting to get a little flop when you hold the brisket in that dead center of the flat. I'm always using my pointer finger and my middle finger to feel for that tenderness. The flat is still tight. You could still see how incredibly firm it is, but the surface is looking incredibly dry, so this is the perfect time to wrap up this brisket. So you can go tallow in your wrap if you'd like. I honestly don't have any on hand, so I'm just going to wrap this in pink butcher paper that I spritzed down with apple cider vinegar. Just a really old school way of cooking brisket. This brisket's only gonna need another hour to 2 hours in this wrap, but you wanna be really diligent and check about every 30 minutes just to see how it's progressing. But back onto the cooker, set to about 275 to 285 degrees Fahrenheit. I'll meet y'all back for the pull. And about an hour and 45 minutes after the wrap, I'm feeling confident that this brisket is fully cooked and is ready to be rested down. But one of the telltale signs is this bend test right here. This brisket is bending very easily, and if we look into the bottom, it's a lot squishier than it was before. Still a bit firm, but I think the rest period will really help this flat section soften up a lot. But it's got a great bend to it, really nice wiggle in the point section. I'm gonna say this point section is a little overdone. Look how squishy it is. It almost just feels like a bag of like Jello. If you take a peek into some of these fatty sections, you should see a nice caramel brown. So I just rewrapped this brisket in brand new butcher paper. Usually about an hour to 2 hours is plenty of time for briskets to rest down at room temperature. It's gonna rest on this tray. And then I'm gonna toss it into the oven set to about 150 degrees Fahrenheit for a nice low heated overnight rest. Let's go get some shut-eye and I'll meet y'all back in the morning. I'm gonna go take a snooze. And here's our brisket after a 15-hour rest, and it's flopping around like a fish out of water. And as I poke into the flat, you can see there's more of a give and the muscle fibers are easier to separate. The point section is still extremely squishy from all the fat. I'm breaking out the Dalstrong slicing knife yet again because I'm not horsing around. Double knife tap on the board is mandatory before the classic slice down the center, and oh my god, she's looking sweet. The slice of the lean is looking mean, fat is rendered, looking clean. Slice once, twice, thrice, looking nice, and of course I had to hand out the burnt ends. These are the burnt ends, you just have to kind of try one.
What?
A rotation for the sensation of fatty brisket, and that slice is not horsing around. Ozzy approves, and that hoodoo rub is making me say, ooh. Yeah, I know, a little shreddy here, but just wait till you see the rest. This brisket cooked without a thermometer is so good, I just can't stop. No, seriously, this is insanely good. But I'm not gonna stand up here and lie to y'all. I know that the point section of this is a little bit shreddy, but making those little mistakes is all part of the process of learning how to cook brisket properly just by feeling it out. But as y'all can see, it still holds up beautifully on a slice, even after it's been reheated. And goodness gracious, that is a beautiful slice of fatty. This lean is looking beautiful. And although it's a little bit tight, it still pulls apart with ease. Perfectly done flat. The flavor on this brisket is just insane. That fat is sweet, the meat is so smoky and tender, and that Hoodoo Brown brisket rub sets the bark on this so well. We're gonna make this a regular around the horse stables because it's not horsing around. And if you're in the market for a new slicing knife, I highly recommend this Dalstrong brisket and slicing knife. It is making quick work out of slicing up this brisket, and y'all tell me, would you not consider this a beautiful slice of fatty brisket? Shout out to Dalstrong for sending me this knife. I cannot speak highly of it enough. It's versatile enough to trim a brisket and slice it at the end of the whole process. Big thanks to Dalstrong again. Shout out to my guys over at Hoodoo Brown Barbecue. Shout out my guy Tyler Hodge. And every bite on this brisket is completely edible because we trimmed it beautifully. Hold your horses. This may be the best brisket I've ever had, and it's damn tasty. Yes, sir. This brisket's begging for a sando with some homemade pickles, so I'm gonna go make one, eat it, and then dream of some briskety lyrics. Here we go. Whoa, I'm definitely in my feels in this dream. Cool. Yeah, let's bring that good energy, it's all surreal. Smoking up a brisket, did it all by feel. You know we sliced it up with that Damascus steel. You know that brisket's got a lot of sex appeal. This ain't no set it and forget it, yeah, like Ron Popeil. But like a slam dunk, yeah, Shaquille O'Neal. No secrets that I'm hiding, nothing to conceal. Hitting that sub button would be so ideal. Thank y'all for tuning into Harry the Horse Barbecue. I really appreciate you checking out this video. Make sure you subscribe for the vibes, leave a like if you learned something, and comment down below if your barbecue's not horsing around. Follow me on Instagram at Harry the Horse Barbecue, and tag me so I can see what y'all are cooking. And with that being said, there's only one more thing, y'all. This one is going straight to the horse's mouth. We'll catch y'all in the next one. Peace. Let's go make a sando.